in. I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Sing it with me now. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. Oh, when I breathe in, come on, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out. Oh, when I breathe, oh, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love.
I am feeling the transcendence from this between the music and Reverend Davis's prayer and the story. Transcendence is our theme this month of May, and so we're launching this new theme. And I want to share with you the exchange that I experienced that is what inspired this message this morning. Someone asked the Lutheran minister, Nadia Belts-Weber, Pastor Nadia, what do you do personally to get closer to God? Before she even realized she was saying it, she replied, what? Nothing. Sounds like a horrible idea to me, trying to get closer to God. Half the time I wish God would leave me alone. Getting closer to God might mean getting told to love someone I don't even like, or to give away more of my money. It might mean letting go of some idea or dream that's dear to me. It's an interesting response, don't you think, from a minister? It's a good reminder that getting closer to God, or whatever you understand to be of highest value and ultimate concern in your life, means having a relationship with something or some ideals that are, it's sort of the power's imbalanced in that relationship. Because whatever that is, those higher ideals, they hold out more authority in our lives for how we should act. More authority than maybe what we want to do, what we yearn to do, what we hope to do. So now, in a relationship where the power is mutual, think to yourself about, let's say, taking a road trip with a good friend or your spouse, and you're getting hungry, and say, where should we go for lunch? How about Pizza Hut? Oh man, I prefer McDonald's. That'll work. Let's do it. Now that would be a mutual relationship. Now, whereas with God, that conversation would go a bit differently. You might begin by saying, let's go to McDonald's. God might respond, are you kidding? That company's raping the earth and exploits its employees. Plus, your body is your temple, my child. And that food is a train wreck. All that sodium and fat. Now, you might still decide, well, it sounds good to me. Let's do it. But if you're trying to live closer to God, or more in alignment with your higher values, you would have to skip that Big Mac and perhaps find some locally sourced organic sandwich shop that pays at least $15 an hour. The point is that whether you believe in God or if you just have a sense of higher values that you try to live by, the big question is, how do we overcome our self-interest when it's in conflict with these larger ideals? I mean, when you want to tell someone how truly idiotic they are on Facebook, but you know that that's probably not the best thing to do, how do you hold back? When you want to go to bed with your neighbor or your coworker, but you have a spouse for whom that would not be okay, or how do you stay on the right side of the line? Or when you overhear a private conversation and you know you should not listen in, but you can't help yourself, how can you resist doing what you want rather than doing what's right? It's the same thing with talking about people behind their back, or when someone makes a sexist or a racist or an anti-Semitic joke, and you really want to speak up, but you really don't want to have to deal with the consequences of the other person's reaction. We all face moments when we're tempted to do what we know we shouldn't do, or when we don't do what we know we should. Now, having a religious life, having a spiritual life, if you will, is about finding ways to close the gap between what we value and what we say and do. It's wonderful when they're aligned, but the reality is that more often than not, there is a gap between what we value and what we do. Now, in Eastern philosophy and in Western psychology, they often point to the problem of the ego. In Buddhism, the ego is a false sense that we have a self that is somehow separate from everything else in existence. So for Buddhists, when we act in our own self-interest without considering the effects that it will have on the earth and its creatures and other people all around us, we are out of alignment. So for Buddhists, it's not about the relationship with God per se, it's about our relationship with all of the cosmos. And when we live in sync with our nature, we live in sync with all of nature. And when we live out of sync with our own nature, we bring ourselves to suffering and other people around us to suffering. Now, in Western psychology, they have a slightly more positive view of the ego. There's a way in which having a healthy ego, a balanced ego, is important to a person, just so that they're not at the whims and the attitudes of everyone else and the culture around them, that they have a sense of self with regard to if they see injustice or they see something wrong, they have enough sense of self to say, I'm not going to go along with that. I don't agree with that. So there's this positive sense of ego in Western psychology, but there's, of course, when there's too much ego and a person starts to feel better than others, then they become separated and cut off from others and from their own feelings and from the impact on other people. And in that, there's a gap. So today, as we introduce this new theme of transcendence, I want to focus us on self-transcendence. How do we transcend the self so that we can truly live in accord with something larger than ourselves? And so this is what I'm proposing that we do. Rabbi Alan Liu, in his book, Be Still and Get Going, explains it this way. He says, Krishnamurti, the great Indian philosopher and spiritual teacher, used to recommend a rather strange practice, which I actually perform from time to the consternation of everyone I know, says Rabbi Liu. Whenever anyone asks us a question, even the simplest question imaginable, a question like, what's your favorite color? Or what kind of music do you like? We should train ourselves to respond immediately with the phrase, I don't know. Otherwise, we find ourselves trotting out habitual answers. Not the way we feel or think at the moment, but the way we felt or thought a long time ago. Perhaps someone asks you, how do you feel about capital punishment? Usually, we do not really answer that question at all. In all likelihood, we have no idea how we feel about capital punishment in this moment, because whenever someone asks us, we trot out the brilliant answer that we formulated 15 years ago. Or our habitual answer, one that worked very well back then and continues to dazzle whenever we pull it out. But as brilliant as it may be, it is perhaps obscuring how we feel about the matter now. We need to pause and sit with the question for a moment to discover the answer which is waiting to arise in this instant. If we want to discover how we feel and what we think about capital punishment or any other issue, we have to let go of that brilliant answer that always gets the response that we expect. We have to say, I don't know, and spend a moment or two in the void, having let go of our habitual, secure response and having no idea, truly no idea what will arise in its place. This is the only way that we can get to the truth in the moment. The only way that we can continue to grow and evolve, he tells us. Now, when a beloved rabbi quotes a Hindu philosopher and they both agree, I think we need to pay attention. So here's what I'm proposing that we do. For the month of May, when someone asks you a question, begin with, I don't know. And really sit with the question and let yourself be open to what comes in that moment. So on Mother's Day, when someone asks, what's your relationship like with your mother? Don't just roll out your stock answer that you always say. Sink into the question. When someone asks, what do you think of transgender youth playing sports? Or what do you think about the idea of reparations for the 1921 Tulsa race massacre? Or any other question, stop and let yourself really consider the question. Consider, where is your answer coming from? Is it fear? Is it habit? Is it well-informed? Is it loving? And try to answer not just from the perspective of your life and your self-interest. I don't know, it doesn't seem right to me. I don't know, I wouldn't do it that way when I was a kid or whatever. But really looking at what is the impact on those who are most close to whatever the concern is. So that we could say, what would be the impact on the larger community or the larger world or the larger society if we were to think about all those concerns, not just what does it mean for me? To ask, what does God or my highest values or love beyond belief, what does it call me to do, to say, to think in this moment? And why does it matter? Why do this silly exercise? It matters because we will never preserve the climate. We will never end racism and sexism and other oppressions and build a strong and just democracy unless we're able to see beyond our own self-interest. Socrates said, an unexamined life is not worth living. We need to think about, what does it mean to be human in this short time that we have in this life? This world it's beautiful and it's full of possibilities. But it's also a long story of violence and disease and corruption and injustice. And a long story of people struggling against those forces. We live in a time when money and power and position and prestige are for many people the signs of a successful life. I've done it right. Look at me. Look at what I got. But the scripture says, what do you have if you've gained the whole world but lost your soul? Too many people are living the time they have in this life chasing fame and fortune and other things that really don't matter. That's not what it's all about. What are you called to do and be? And how can you rise above just living for yourself? I began this message with the question posed to Reverend Nadia Belts-Weber. What do you do personally to get closer to God? And she replied, nothing. What? Sounds like a horrible idea to me. Half the time I wish God would leave me alone. Getting closer to God would mean getting told to love someone I don't even like, or to give away even more of my money. It might mean letting some idea or dream that is dear to me get ripped away. Whether for you it is a sense of God's will in your life that directs you, or the idea of the interconnectedness of all existence of which you are a part, I have to ask you, what is it that calls you to live for something larger than yourself? And I hope that your answer starts with, I don't know. Go from there. I love you. I miss you. And I hope that we'll be together again soon. Thank you for joining us. For 100 years, All Souls in Tulsa has been a beacon of this free faith. We offer our services and programs freely online for all those who are interested. You can help us to do this by making a one-time gift today or a reoccurring pledge. We really appreciate you joining us and being a part of helping us make All Souls in Tulsa what it is. Thank you.
And we are the light, we stand wide open, a beacon in the dark, our love has spoken. We will not be afraid, we have chosen to be brave and be the light. And light song, it is more than a distant story. It's a mystery of this life. Only within me, as the old ways die and the fear passes away. reflect your glory. Let my life be in you, and yourself become my story. And be the light, and be the light. We are the light, and we are the light. We stand wide open, a beacon in the dark. Our love has spoken. We will not be afraid. We've chosen to be brave and be the light. And lights up, it is more than a distant story. It's a mystery of this life.